Today on I Wonder, we're going to be talking about the college application process if you have an upcoming senior in high school. Some preparation ideas, some tips and tricks from this mom of three. Welcome. So if you've been listening, you know that we've done a bit of a series now on college prep because I have been through this a bunch of times now and I've heard a bunch of questions from a whole lot of people. And I thought, let me just put everything I know and everything I've learned and everything I've heard into one place. And so we've done an episode on how the 4 pillars of explicit parenting apply to the college application process in order to, keep your relationship intact. We've done an episode on what to know your junior year. And now we're going to talk about what, we're getting into the nitty gritty and we're going to talk about what to do senior year. And so if you haven't already listened to those first 2 episodes, I would recommend them because they kind of lead into this one. And also, if you don't have time, I would definitely listen to the junior year part because that includes some big chunks of what kids can do to prepare for the college process. So now that we are in senior year or senior summer, as I like to call it, the summer before our kids turn into seniors and you're listening to this, there are a few key pieces that you need to start prepping for. And really, they need to start prepping for it. If you've listened to the other 2 episodes, you know that I'm a very big proponent of the student driving this train. And so we are here to support and be their co-pilot and help in ways that we see maybe they need our help and offer support when we see they might need it. So, but some things to keep in mind when you're sort of watching to see how you can support. They're going to have essays that they need to write. Maybe they started writing them in school their junior year. Maybe they haven't even picked up a keyboard to be able to start. And so the first thing they need to know is who needs what from them from an essay perspective, because some of the essays will be the same for some places and some will require more for both college applications and if they're applying for any kind of outside scholarship. So take some time, dig around the internet a little bit, look at your college information that you've already gathered and see what do I need to write and who do I need to write what for and how many of those things. And then if you can get them to do this, it's great. I will tell you, I'm not sure a single one of mine did, but if you can get them to block out some time to work on it, if nothing else, talk to them about when are they due? When do you have to have these things done and written by? And what do you need? It's not great if they're looking at the last minute and figure out they have 5 essays to write for this one college they really want to go to. So start that process a little bit early. Going into that, you also need to know some of those dates. When are things due from an application perspective, but also when will they hear from these colleges? Is it a rolling type of admission where maybe they apply in October and they hear in October, or is nothing going to come till May? And start to keep track of all this stuff so they know, okay, I applied to these 5 and this one's this date, this one's this date, this one's this date. But some other ones you might want to look into are, what are the due dates for any outside scholarships I want to talk about? What is the due date for the financial aid application? What is the due date, for parents at least? What is the due date for the tuition deposit or the, accepted students day or the new student orientation? Things where you might have to book a hotel or book travel or any of those things. Those are all dates and times to keep in mind. And that kind of rolls into the next part, which is money. And so we can't talk about college without talking about money, right? So you should have some idea of what it costs to apply and then what it costs once you get there. And what I mean by that is applications, each university has an application fee, generally. Sometimes they don't. And then oftentimes, though, you can get them waived. So look into that. Is there a way that you can attend an online, an online information session and get a code to waive your application fee? Sometimes if you just ask for information from the university, you can get to waive that application fee. If your kid's school has college fairs, colleges come and visit, sometimes just visiting a booth, you can get something to waive your application fee. So have them be on the lookout for that. Where can they find the things that help them waive application fees? They could apply to more maybe that way, or at least it just costs you a little bit less to apply to those colleges. So you need money for application fees. You need money for deposits when the time comes. But you also need to think about money for visiting, money for new student orientation. Can you afford to do both Accepted Students Day and New Student Orientation? Are you telling them they can go to Accepted Students Day at 3 different places so they can compare and contrast? And can you actually afford to do that? Are the places within driving distance? Do you have to stay overnight? Those are the types of things to be thinking about. If your student is going somewhere where they're going to have to fly, do you have that budget to be able to fly the whole family out? Are you going to drive out and then fly back? Are you going to have them take a car? Like, all of the financial decisions that come into play sometimes get lost in the shuffle of apply, and let's just get you there and figure it out. So look at hotels, local hotels. I can tell you with 100% certainty, if your student is going anywhere that has sports, the hotels will be significantly more expensive on weekends when there are games. They will also probably be significantly more expensive during new student orientation and parents' weekend and any other time they know you're going to be there. Graduation, they're going to jack up the prices of the local hotels. So maybe you take some time as the parent to look around the towns where their schools are and see if there's 10, 15, 20 minutes away, you could rent a car and drive. Or if you're driving, you could just drive 10, 15, 20 minutes away and stay in a hotel for significantly less. At my students' university, the local hotels are exceedingly expensive during game weekends and any other kind of parent weekend at the university. I mean, they know when people are there, and so they jack up the prices. You can find one 15 minutes away and it would be $200 a night less. So where they're going or where you think they're going, and this isn't an early September thing. This is like after they find out and make a decision. Unless you are at a big time sports school, in which case you might want to book hotels as soon as you know the answer, because they will be significantly more expensive as you get closer and closer. Same with airline tickets. If you have to fly anywhere, the minute they make a decision, you might want to find out when parents' weekend is and book your flights and book your hotels. One thing that we sort of accidentally did is we had hotel points, and that was really advantageous when it came time for this kind of stuff, because we not only use it for hotels, sometimes we have converted them to flight miles points. And while we haven't had to use this for the colleges, we have had to use them. And so I think if you have a kid that's going somewhere where they have to fly, get a points credit card and start racking up those points, because if you're going to need to pay for tickets back and forth, it's always helpful to have some points. Same with hotel points. Okay, that's my money spiel for you. What you need to know now, though, is to just be aware of the various different deposits and times and things that you're going to need to look at. Does your university have a payment plan if you're planning on going that way? How does the payment plan work? Like, these are things as a parent you can be investigating while your student is busy writing essays and filling out applications. So your job is to continue that dialogue with your student, find a best way to help them organize this information, be really clear with the boundaries for where they can go, what they can do, how they can do it, how much money things are, what they, need to tell you before they charge, kind of thing. And, keep that dialogue up and running, because they're overwhelmed too. And so you can't just say it once and expect that they're always going to remember. Okay, we're going to jump into this part, which I like to call acronyms and weird vocabulary, because there's so many things. I've already said like 5 of them that get thrown around during the college application process, during your freshman year, before you sort of understand their university and their process. And, this isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but for the application period, phrases like Common App and SAT and ACT and Super Score and Test Optional and Early Admission versus Early Decision and Rolling Admission and FAFSA and CSS and Merit versus Need and Tuition Awards versus Loans and Federal Loans versus Private Loans and Room Deposit and Hold Tuition and all of those things. So let's start at the beginning, and I'll go through some of these that are really the more important ones that you need to know right now. So the Common App. You probably already know what that is by now if you have a high school senior, because you've been hearing about it all junior year and all senior year. But for those of you who don't, the Common App is just what it sounds like. It's an application that your student can fill out once with all of their geographic information or identifying information, all of their educational information, and then an essay or two. That then can be sent to various universities that participate in this Common App program, which is a lot of them. Many state schools, many private schools. If they don't, and this is something your student needs to know, I should have put this in the prep part. If they don't participate in that, your student needs to know that, because they will do that Common App and they will send it out. And then there might be 3 or 4 other applications they have to do for specific universities. In addition, some universities, even if they take the Common App, might ask for extra essays. So your student needs to look into that. If I want to go to this school here, I want to apply through the Common App, but also they have 2 extra essays that I have to do. There might also be essays for scholarships involved with specific universities that aren't necessarily part of the Common Application. So even though they're doing the Common App, just have them really take a look at all the parameters and expectations for each individual university to make sure they're not missing anything. So that's what the Common App is. SAT and ACT you're probably well versed in now. The only reason I bring them up is so that in case you don't know about the super score, which is when if your student takes the SATs a couple different times, they can combine their best math and their best English and put them together. Best language, I'm not sure what it's called now, but the two parts of the SAT, they can combine their two best and send that off to universities. Both SAT and ACT, I mentioned this in the junior episode, but look at the universities specifically to see who still is test optional, who stayed, who didn't stay test optional, which ones they take. Some don't even take the SAT, but most do. How do you send it? Do you even want to send it? Talk to your kid's college counselor. Have your kid talk to their college counselor at school about where should I send it? Where shouldn't I send it? Because sometimes if you're way below, way above what the average is, it might not behoove you. And they're a test optional school. It might not behoove you to send it. For some, you might want to send it for scholarship opportunities. Even though you don't need it to get in, you might want to send it for merit scholarship. Speaking of that, let's talk about merit versus need-based. So merit scholarship is the scholarship that a school might award based on your academic record. You might get it from the university itself. You might get it from outside sources. You might get it from, local places that want to award students for good academic progress. There are other types of scholarships. You can get a scholarship because you're a Polish American who lives in this town, or you can get a scholarship because you want to be a teacher and the local teachers union has a scholarship, or you can get a scholarship because you're left-handed. There's a lot out there, and you can look for those and apply for those. But those are often merit-based. They're merit either based on your actual accomplishments or just who you are as a person, or they are need-based, meaning you have. And don't we all, I know we do all have financial need for college, but you have a specific financial need, or you fit within the parameters of whatever this scholarship is for financial need. Since we're on the topic of, let me get to this first before we get to the FAFSA. So EAED. So early admission and it's early action. Early action and early decision, EAED. ED is binding. That's all you need to know. Early action is just what it sounds like. It's an earlier date. If you want to apply to this university by November 1st or October 25th, then you have your application in early, and the rest of the population doesn't have their application in until January 1st or something like that. There's a couple reasons to do it. Quite frankly, I've done it with all three of my kids because then they're done by November 1st and they don't have to stress out anymore. Most schools will take them. Some won't. At the time, a few years ago, I'm not sure if it's true anymore, but a few years ago, the University of California system did not take early action. They had one date for everybody to apply. It might not be true anymore. Check into it. But some universities have an early action date and a regular, everybody else date. And then the early decision option is if you really want to commit to that one university and it's a binding agreement that you will go to that university. There's some mixed messages out there, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not an expert on this because none of my kids did it, but there's some mixed messages about early decision. It's a binding decision, but there's some mixed messages about whether you still have to make it if the money's not there. So it used to be the understanding was if you did early decision, you were bound to go there no matter what the financial package was. I've heard recently that actually they have to present you a financial package before you can commit to it. I don't know if that's true, but just know early decision is binding. And it's like if your kid really wants one and only one, and maybe they have a better chance of going because they're applying so early and they're telling the school, yes, I want you really badly. Early action used to be similar to that because you said, I'm doing the work to apply to you early because I really want to go here. But I think so many kids started doing it. And again, this is anecdotal. I have no proof of this, but so many kids started doing early action and so many universities started taking all these early action applications that I'm not sure it holds the same weight of, hey, I really want to go here and commit here, because they might apply early action to 15 places. And so be just on the lookout. If your kids do all early action, they may hear back earlier, and what may happen is they might get on the wait list. They'll either get in earlier, they'll get put on the wait list until everybody else's applications are through, or they'll get, denied right away early on. Honestly, I've not heard of that happening. And most people I know get put on the wait list. And then if they're going to get denied later, they get denied after everybody else's applications are in. But just know EA and ED, when you see those, it's early action and early decision. And then rolling admission is just that. You apply, there's usually a firm deadline, but you can apply sort of whenever, and you'll hear soon after. One of my kids applied and literally found out, I think 2 weeks later, that she got in somewhere. So it's just like what it sounds. It's rolling admission. You apply, you find out when they tell you. They sort of take them as they get them and let people in. That I want to clarify something on that, though. I said my kid found out she got in 2 weeks later, but the truth is she was also applying to a special program within the university. And so I didn't say this, but one thing you want to be on the lookout on is if your child has different parameters or different dates for university admission versus a special program admission. For instance, you might get into the University of, I'm just making this up, so don't take this, the University of Michigan, but you don't get into their engineering program or their journalism school or their acting school. You get into the university, but you don't get into their specific school that you applied to within that university. And so watch for that, how they apply and then how they're going to get accepted. Watch for the different parameters for each. Sometimes you don't even have to do that. You just apply to the university. But in some universities, they're very clear on we accept this many people in this major, this many people on this major, this many people on this major. Again, this is where your college counselor comes in and you might talk to them about, here are my grades, here are my scores, here's what I want to do. Is it better if I just apply general admission or I apply to this specific, part of the university? Is it better if I don't send my scores? Is it better if I do send my scores? All of those things are really individual to the kid and will be really supported by the college counselors at high school because they know. They know this stuff better than any of us do. Okay, rolling, binding, EDEA, we got through that stuff. The FAFSA and the CSS. So FAFSA is FAFSA. I don't know. It's something about free academic federal student acceptance or assistance or something like that. Whatever the case, the FAFSA, FAFSA form is the thing that we all talk about ad nauseum. You may have heard a lot about it when your kid was a junior because they revamped it and it was a hot mess and every university got their data late and people got their financial aid packages late. And the year of 2023, 24 was, the word FAFSA was in the news a lot because it was a bit of a mess. That said, it actually isn't as scary as people make it out to be. Essentially what it is you upload all of your financial information into this online document. If you give it permission to attach to your W-2 form from your 1099 or your tax form, if you give it permission, it will go right into the IRS database and suck all that information out and put it in for you. Your student has to fill it out. So be careful of that. We have a lot of time where I am sitting right next to my student and they are filling it out. And so they have to fill it out with their information and your information. If your student's paying for school by themselves, they'll just fill it out on their own. If there's special cases, if it's divorced, if it's a situation of divorce or separation and you're each coming in with some, or one isn't contributing at all, you might get a little bit of a break on that. Like there's different things, but it's essentially you send all your information, it goes to the federal government, they decide how much you can get in student loans. Or sometimes these are also used for merit scholarships at at all universities, and there are merit scholarships, but the federal portion of it is loans. Unless you are a national merit scholar and your kid is the most brilliant of all and gets that scholarship. That also involves the SAT. So everybody has to fill out the FAFSA, even if you know you're not going to get any money, but you still fill it out because you could probably get a small student loan each semester or something. And then the other one is the CSS, which I can't exactly remember what that is. It's something like student profile or I don't know, whatever. But it's the FAFSA for some small private colleges. Not even small. Some private colleges use the CSS. So it's similar to the FAFSA. It asks you a lot more questions. I feel it's very intrusive. I hate it, just so you know. But needs to be done in some places. And that gets back to the merit versus need-based assistance. There are scholarships out there where it doesn't matter how much money you do or don't make. It's based solely on merit. And then there are some that are only loan scholarships, types of loans, that kind of stuff are based on need. The colleges are going to use the FAFSA to decide what your need is. So it's always more, they always think we can contribute more than we actually can. So just be on the lookout for that. Or that we feel comfortable contributing at least. And they sometimes will base their need-based scholarships on that number, on what they think you can contribute as a household based on this information they're getting from the FAFSA. Okay, that is if you want more information on any of that, there are a million people out there trying to talk to you about student loans and college financing. I'm sure they will gladly bend your ear for a half an hour or so and give you more nitty gritty. But that's just my sort of 2 cents on what FAFSA and CSS even stand for and merit versus need is. And then you have tuition awards versus loans. So you may be awarded from the university tuition, they will lower your tuition based on those merit awards that they give you. And you will often, when your student is accepted, get a package. So it's all now an email. I'm if you were watching, you see I'm like acting as if it's a big envelope. Not anymore. It's all emails, but you'll sometimes get an email accepting you. And then a couple days later, even another email spelling out what the financial package or award is from the university. And that may include loans, but it also might have some merit money in there too. So it'll give you sort of tuition at the top or estimated tuition at the top, which is always a little bit like, breath catching because they overestimate. So they'll include things like travel costs and things like that. And so it's this big fat number. And then they'll show you what the student's getting from a loan perspective, what they're getting from a scholarship perspective, and then what you'll actually owe at the end. And that always shifts around and changes a little bit. And sometimes it depends on their major. And sometimes it depends on, what year they are in school. But you have to do the FAFSA in order to get that award paper. So you as the parent need to know, okay, what's the date for the FAFSA? Because even though the student needs to fill it out, they need your information. So you should do it together that freshman year. There's also going to be things like a room deposit. Once they make their decision and they get accepted, you're going to need to put a room deposit down. It's good to look into those. We put a room deposit down on a university my student never went to because it was a fairly nominal fee and we got it back. And they just wanted to make sure if they did choose this place, they had a decent place to live. Not that they were necessarily going to run out, but they had seen it and they knew where they wanted to be. And so we put a room deposit down. You can also do some tuition. Sometimes there's a tuition deposit necessary. Not always, though. Typically, it's room and like a smaller amount of tuition. So your role as a parent in all of this, and if you listen to the junior year one, this is going to sound quite repetitive, but continue to tune in to know your own expectations and your own boundaries, and then communicate them to your student early and often, because telling them once is not going to do it. And then talk with your kid about how you can help with the organization of all of this. What do they need to feel supported rather than pressured? Because they're already feeling pressured enough. So the two of you or the three of you should organize your calendar, your budget, and your expectations around how this year is going to look. And I want to end with senior year of high school isn't all about applying to college. Yes, the early part of the year feels like that's all you're talking about, but there's also homecoming games and there's, soccer games and there's wrestling events and there's club fairs and there's other things that are really fun and exciting. And it's the last time they're going to get to do this stuff. So in all of this, remember to take a step back and not only absorb them and take them in this glorious season of their life, but remind them to do the same. They have a lot of fun stuff ahead of them and a lot of overwhelming stuff ahead of them, and try to help them focus more on the fun than the overwhelm. And you do the same for yourself. Thanks for listening. You got this. I promise we're going to get through it together.